Algerian-born Pauline Galiana is an internationally exhibiting mixed media artist with an emphasis on obsessive and meditative art processes. Her work often combines mundane materials with meticulous planning and rigorous grid patterns. Ms. Galiana will explain some of her creative process and her use of common motions of drawing, looping, sticking, and sewing. As I said, her current exhibit is now on display in the library's Adler Art Gallery and will be on display through the month of October. So I'm very happy to welcome Pauline Galiana. Take it away, Pauline.
Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be on this program. Thank you very much for having me. So now we can look at the work closely and at things around us closely as well. So I'll let you go through the slides, Jeff, to start with, because
sure,
it continues.
Yeah, and so today, folks, we're just going to have more of a conversation with Pauline as she guides us through some of her work. And one of the things I noted here was that you work simultaneously on different pieces of work, which I think is really interesting. So I'll be curious to hear more about that, how you're able to focus on one piece of artwork and another at the same time.
So for this presentation, I organized the works by series. The way I work on them, they all have a name. And but in the studio, actually, many of these different works are together on the table, as you can see in the picture. So I'm able to work on all these things because they are all on the table. So if something has to dry, I can switch to something else and so on. And when I'm doing some just like making process, which doesn't require so much thinking, I can think about another work which is sitting next to me, and not touched yet. So now we can see the next slide. So let's start with the shredded series, which are basically trying to find harmony and meaning out of chaos from my trash can. Basically, this is all made with, most of it is junk mail gone through the shredder. And I take the pieces, I select them, and I loop them, glue them, and mount them on a board or a panel. You can see next slide. So we are going to show a few examples of these pieces.
And I think a number of these, Pauline, you're going to be showing us the full work and then a closer view.
Right, yeah. And this one is just from the side, so you could see the 3D aspect of it. Sometimes I have to be honest, I cheat on the source of the material. Here I've been using origami paper because most of the shredded material I have is like envelopes, security envelopes with, there was always like a special pattern, Con Edison, American Express, or whatever. So I thought that reminded me of some of the gift wrapping papers or the origami paper. So here you really see on the close-up view to the right, the security envelope at the bottom left and the origami paper, just I put in, but it's mostly security envelopes.
I don't think I would have known those were security envelope pieces unless you said that.
But that's the whole idea. That's what artists are supposed to do. They are supposed to help you to listen, to hear, to smell, to look, anything, depending on their field. So here on the right, we have the full piece, but I wanted to show the close-up, the intricate pattern of the forms merging together.
So Pauline, how do you attach each piece? Is it with glue, I'm guessing?
Yeah, it's with glue. First of all is to shred the paper. Actually now I'm move on to cutting the pieces of paper by hand, not using the shredder anymore. And then I loop every piece, I glue the loop together. Then when the loop is done, I mount it on the paper or the board. And I follow a grid, which a template.
So in terms of the colors that you are choosing, do you have sort of a preconceived idea of what colors you're wanting to combine, or is it something that comes along as part of the process?
Well, it depends on the material I have. And if I go for one piece, I decide I want to make it all as light as possible, as like the first piece we saw. So that was the challenge to work with the security envelopes, but also to work with the clear piece of paper, the window, the address window, for example. So yes, there's a choice before I start the piece. Then I go along the way. So this is a special series. It's called the Shredded Impressions. It's made after Claude Monet cathedral series. He painted 30 paintings of the same cathedral of Rouen. He destroyed 10 of them. Only 20 are left today. And he decided to paint the cathedral almost in the same angle. And he had many easels in his studio. He rented a studio across the cathedral. And depending on the day and the light and the time of the day, he would switch easel. So somehow, it's a way of working like many artists do, and I'm doing the same thing. Not to say like I'm like Claude Monet, but because he's from my heritage, I'm looking at the way he worked, and he works with color, he works with impressions. And I thought, well, hold on, he's doing color work about a cathedral, which is all stone from the outside. So it's about the reflection of the light, the sunlight on the stone. But the meaning of a cathedral is when you go inside the cathedral, and the color and the light comes through the rose window, the stained glass. So I thought, let me play on that, refocus my work on his work from the light coming from the window, the rose window glass. So here I use the center of you can see the structure of the building, the cathedral, but I use at the center of each circle you see the clock above the entrance door. And from that, I reinterpreted the painting of Claude Monet from using the junk mail I had in my trash can, but there was not enough colors because the difference from today and that time, we can see just with the colors we use in our, all the works we make. We have always the same red, the same blue. So I had to paint over some of these shredded documents to match Monet's colors. And that was an amazing exercise. So we can see the next slide, you see the close-up of one piece. So you see really on the right, on the close-up, there's a red piece, and on the side of it, it's text. But obviously I painted over it to get to that bright red because I couldn't find that specific red in my material.
So interesting to see them more close up, whereas the farther away you are, you really do get more of the Monet inspired image.
Right. And I thought, okay, today Monet did it with brush strokes. And that was really almost a scandal to not do a continuous line and soft and smooth structure. He used a rough brushstroke like his peers in that in the Impressionist group and the Nabi painters. So I decided today what would be the equivalent of a brushstroke. I thought about pixel, but I'm not a computer artist. I thought, how can I do the idea of a pixel? So I used this stripe of paper, the shredded stripe of paper. It is something we all use. It's from everybody's life. All the waste we have, we never look at the waste. We just consume and move on. So just looking back into my own waste and try to link to the past of an artist. So now we switch to a totally different work, but also using the circle, which is a favorite form of mine. And these are mandalas, but they are fusion mandalas because I use a very mundane materials, plexiglass, plastic, and color-coded labels. You know, the ones you put at the bottom of an art piece in a gallery when it's sold, the red dot. Well, no red dot here, but a lot of different colors. So you will see these pieces. There are some in the show at the gallery, and they are mounted on a mechanism which makes them rotate at different speeds in a totally random pattern. So we can see the next slide, yes. So one of the large pieces, they are about 30 inches wide. And it's like 2 inches away from the wall. So the light helps, you can create these shadows, colorful shadows, like the cathedral windows somehow. So even the works are very different from each other, from each series. There's always something in common.
So what speed do these spin?
Well, that's still a surprise to me. Because the battery are on their way to the library. So, well, I work with an engineer. Zach Friedman is wonderful engineer and artist in his own way. We created a random program. So I created the art piece, the disc, and it's mounted on a machine with a computer inside. Each piece has a computer. And the program is meant to be, you turn right, you turn left, you go fast, you go slow, you go medium, you do 2 seconds, you do 30 seconds, over an hour, and so on. So the first idea was to use a motion sensor. And I did a previous show with motion sensor, only when the audience, the visitors would walk in the room or around the room, they would trigger the motion. But some technical, challenges made it like, let's keep it steady with programming randomness, which was an incredible challenge for the engineer.
Yes, I can imagine that would be. So I think just even imagining these spinning, really kind of transforms the work into something.
Right, because the construction of the work itself, the geometry, it looks symmetrical like mandalas are usually, except I work off center for almost everything, and I layer all these dots with a different center, so the geometry becomes kind of crooked. So when it's still, you try to understand the construction of it, then it starts to move and you are lost again. So you have to let go, and that's the whole idea of the mandala. And it's the idea of fusion mandala and again, related to the chaos around us and trying to make sense out of it, which is a theme we find all across my work. So then we have a smaller piece here. This one is about 17 inches wide. There you see the detail. And so it's tricky, but I work on the piece backwards. So what you see actually is the back of the work. I decided to not show the other side. So the first layer is white dots. Then on top of that, I put a layer of pink dots or yellow dots or green or whatever. And by transparency, the color comes through a little bit. So, and it's a process. I control the idea of it, but I don't control the result, because depending on the glue on the sticker and the way the pressure of how it's applied and all that, the colors start to change. So it gives life to it, and it gives a notion of time passing by, because it's not perfect. It's not like a computer image, and the spacing of the dots are, it's handmade, so it's not perfect either. But that's where life comes in.
That's so interesting, because I don't think I would have known unless you'd explained that we were looking at the reverse side of this piece of artwork. I can't really imagine, like, you wouldn't do that with a painting.
It's very sleek. The facade is sleek. It's glossy plexiglass. It's very sleek, but behind is all this building and sweat and errors, trial and errors to try to create harmony.
So in terms of, chaos and trying to control the chaos, why is that a important theme for your work?
It's my life experience. And I think if you put it that way, it's a lot of people's experience. It's the same for most of us. We decide to look at it or not. We decide to make sense out of it or not. We are a victim of it or not. So it's a way to, some people say that art is, it's a word I'm hard to pronounce, therapeutic. But it's not healing to me when I do it, because it's a lot of labor, but the thoughts put in when I want to make a piece or a series are healing. And I hope that when people look at it, they feel the healing for themselves. And this series was also made for, I did an installation of these pieces at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Center Cancer Treatment in Brooklyn. And I was thinking that you go to any medical space in a waiting room, it's very chaotic. First of all, everybody is anxious because you go there because you are sick or one of your loved one is sick. And then you have televisions and noise and all these things. And I thought, well, that's the moment where we should be quiet and calm. And so I thought, let me do pieces so to bring some kind of movement and thinking, but in a very positive way. I wish there would be no televisions in any waiting room, in any medical facility. It's such a nonsense, but people get, I don't know how to put it. The use of television is a way to relax for them. So I do not understand that. it's not my way. So I start to work on that series to try to make, what would I do to relax?
I don't think that's something that you can, I'm sorry, we're ready to move on there. You can put into words. It's really more.
So every work is based on a personal experience, but it's not the point of it. It's the personal experience of the artist, of my, work is, it's just a start. It's where, chaos, it's chaos, all the mail coming in, the bills unpaid or whatever, you don't have time to do. This is chaos. We have to deal with it. That's all. So here it's a piece, it's a series. So from kinetic collages to floating paper quilts, these are made out of my painting rags. So it's a form of chaos. Again, it's the waste. But sometimes, when you paint, it's a very slow process. It's oil painting, so it takes time to dry, and I wait until layer is dry to go above it and add color and so on. So I basically, those rags have been used for my all paintings called Silent. So I was using these paper rags, which are actually napkins. Because again, it's another way of consumption. If you take out, you have all these paper napkins, and they always give you a lot of them. And what do you do with them? Why so many? Why do we need plastic plates and plastic forks and all these things? So it's all combined. I thought, oh, those are really good quality paper napkins. So I'm going to use them to clean my brushes, right? And then I paint this, one silent painting, and I thought, oh, I don't know, next. And the work in progress is always challenging and disappointing and all that. So here I am thinking, this is really bad what I'm doing. This is really, really bad. So I looked down and I looked at my color tray, and I looked at my paint brushes, and I look at my rags, and I said, this is it. The rags are much more interesting than the painting at that moment of the painting, because the rags are just spontaneous, and the colors come through, and the texture of the paint, if it's translucent or not, or thick, and then it's more true to myself at that moment. So I kept those rags, and a few years later, I worked with the rags, and I cut them into pieces, and I tried to make sense out of it. Again, always make sense out of the shredded pieces, make sense out of chaos. So that's another piece. It's much smaller. I think it's 16 inches by 16 inches. And I thought, okay, I'm building these grids, and okay, I'm from, I speak French, French culture, European culture, North African culture. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm in New York City. I've been here for more than 20 years. Let me talk about the culture here. And I thought, quilts, even if quilts are from all over the world, America has a talent for quilts, and it's a very alive hobby and craft and art. So I thought, okay, I'll work on quilts. And I picked this pattern with, which is called the rose pattern. And I tried to rebuild a block. If you look at the top left of the image, I'm pointing with my finger, but I can't show you that. Yeah, thank you, Jeff. You recognize the rose shape, and then I repeat that. The only difficulties I gave myself is that I don't have the fabric by the yard. This is paper, and this is from rags. So I have to try to build a pattern out of some material I don't have enough to be consistent. So my goal is try to make my viewer see the pattern through my painting rags. So that's a challenge. It's like a game, you know. Do I succeed or not? It's up to you. It's not up to me. And on the right, you see a detail where you see it. So each piece of paper, it's cut. It's about, I think 1 inch. Each square is about, on the right, each square is about 1 inch wide. And it's stitched with a very thin thread on a piece of paper.
So as we're going through these, Pauline, I'm realizing that this is an extremely labor-intensive process. So can you describe that a little bit in terms of how you're able to, like how many hours are involved, for example, in the piece that we're looking at here, and how do you maintain your stamina to do that?
Okay. Well, first of all, I never count the hours, because otherwise you get depressed. It's a process. It's a process versus a product. So the process is about time going by. Then the second thing is to not get bored with a work like that. And the other thing is to be able to sustain the strength and the skill to do it. So that's why I work on many projects at the same time. Because if I get bored, if I get clumsy about using the needle or doing something more, requires more strength in my hands, I put it down, I'll switch to another work. And that way I'm able to work more hours and forget about how many hours I worked on that and nothing is coming out of it yet. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. That makes sense how you would naturally fall into working simultaneously on different projects.
So on that one, I decided to push the quilt idea beyond the block pattern, and just to go work with the flow of the pieces and to make it, to use everything, not just the strong stains, but to use the edge of the napkins. So you recognize the little lines and pattern on the white pieces, and to see what just like, the grid, how can you create a rhythm using a very simple grid. So same technique, but not exactly. This one is same size, 16 by 16 inches, but each piece is not fixed to a background. It's stitched to each other. So it's very flexible. And I started to embroider some corners to add more strength to it, and also design. So it's always like what tool, how to do it, and use and bring in meaning with the tools and the technique. So now, working on the quilts, I said, okay, why not plastic quilts? And plastic quilts are one of the things during that big series of fantastic series, which I actually present a lot of pieces in the show at the Port Washington Library. It's more like because they are made out of recycled plastic, the pieces by themselves are not really worth, they are worth, the time and my technique or whatever. But the idea was really to see, let's use everything around us. We know environment, pollution, and all that. Actually, my goal is to show people that plastic is incredibly precious and we should not throw it away. We should reuse it. That's for sure. But it is an amazing material. So at the show, at the library, I developed different ideas about how precious the plastic is. And I'm not really attached to the art pieces themselves. I want to tell stories, so I created these videos. We might see one a little further later, further in presentation. These art pieces are kind of characters in videos I made. So here, like the napkins, the paper napkins, the rags, quilts, I made the quilts on one bag, plastic bag, which I opened. So that's my base here. And we have the produce mesh bag quilts. Very challenging to do.
I can imagine, and I know there's one similar to this on display.
Yeah, and this one is made with a sewing machine, and some others, I think I have a picture, next slide, and they are big. Oh, no, it's not here. It will be shown later in the presentation. I hand stitch 10 feet by 10 feet. I had some magic helpers.
Always good to have magic helpers.
Oh, yes. So now still salvaging things and treasures, and I can help to be a visual person. This is my way to communicate with the world. So I see things everywhere and I make stories with them. So I would pick this, googly eyes, like, for keys or toys, and pick the museum tags in the street, sewing machine bobbins, buttons, what do we see? Paint tubes, caps, and so on. You'll see more pictures on next slides. Detail. So for this series, the boxes series, I also reused the mounting support is Polaroid canister. When it's empty, as I used to do, I also make photography. I use the box, which I fill with a plaster, and I embedded my treasures. So it's actually the box series in my private miniature museum.
So I can imagine that New York City must be a particularly ripe environment for finding interesting objects.
Yeah, if you're not too self-conscious about picking up things on the ground and people looking at you like you're a crazy person. So yeah, I mean, and always trying to make order, harmony, finding the preciousness of these things, the colors, we need to take the time to look at things.
Yeah, you mentioned that at the beginning of taking a closer look.
Yeah, taking
at objects that we tend to maybe brush past.
Right. Now from small to big, these are the silent paintings, all on canvas. I use the rags, that's from these paintings, I use the rag from. So they're pretty large, that's why I put the photo on the left, large scale. So we can go to the next slide. 6 paintings together. And the next slide just should be 1 painting by itself. So actually, it doesn't look like recycled art or art with recycled material, but it's a recycled impression and recycled art making process. Which I'm not showing here, but I do Polaroid photos. And I really like in the Polaroids the painterly effect of the medium. So here I was trying to reproduce that with, not reproducing a photo I made, but reproducing the effect the pigment of a Polaroid. And actually I use these canisters from these photos. I'm not showing here, but anyway, tell me, let me know if you don't follow me.
I think I understand that. It's a different sort of a take on recycling.
Yeah, it's recycling everywhere, recycling ideas from somebody else, from yourself, from your own experience, always going back and forth, searching. And I call these paintings silent because there's not much going on in terms of narration. But the more you look at them, the more they vibrate. And the vibration, the visual vibration, made me think of sound getting louder. It's like in the night, it's very quiet, but suddenly you hear a sound and it becomes louder, and you open your eyes to try to hear better. So that's that kind of weird feeling I'm trying to convey here. And actually these paintings in real life, when you see them, they become visually louder when there's less light.
I'm curious, how does that happen in terms of there being less light and then?
I don't know, because I don't know exactly, but it's all these phenomenon of the impression of the light on the eye and the after image or something like that. So there's always the impression, and you search for meaning, you search for what are these shapes, and when you search, you pay more attention, and then the colors, because it's all about color, they come out more stronger, because the first look, it's so easy, simple story I'm telling. It's 4 ovals. It's kind of organic shapes, not really. They're off-centered, tilting to the right or the left, irregular, but they are geometrical, but not really. So you don't know the story. So when you look at them very quickly. But suddenly, when you turn your head around and look at the white wall, you have this after image in your eye, in your mind, and it becomes louder, and you go back to the painting. What did I just see? So that's my intention too. It's like, even if I make things very small, I always try to pull the viewer in, but looking at details or looking at a word on a piece of shredded paper, or at the opposite, looking at something so big that you don't see anything. You don't have the time to immerse yourself into it. So I try to find other ways to bring in the viewer to slow down. Now we go to small again. So these are like 8 inches by 8 inches paintings, or 12 by 12. And this is more like experimental, not like I'm trying to find something. I just want to explore. More than experimental, it's more like an exploration into colors, materials, mediums, and whatever on a small surface. So this is an encaustic, for example.
So can you explain what encaustic is?
So encaustic is a wax, basically. It's beeswax that you melt and you mix with pigments, and you applied hot on a surface. And then you can, then you cool it down and you add more things. You can do imprints and so on.
So it sounds like this is another medium that it's only in the applying of it that it turns into something else.
Right, right. And then go back to the previous slide, then you see this kind of fan shape actually a cupcake,
Like a wrapper?
yeah, the wrapper, exactly, that I put down and that I removed. And
Almost
the
looks
next,
like,
I'm sorry.
I said it almost looks like wings.
Yes, that was the idea, actually. You got it, Jeff. It's like, that was an angel going by. So this is not encaustic. This is tempera paint on wood. And actually, and wood sticks, you know, the gardening little sticks, you put the name of the plants. So I have that at the bottom, and then I let the color come through it, through the white tempera paint over it. So it's really an exploration of mediums, encaustic and paper.
So you're really experimenting with how they end up interacting.
Yes, that's the luxury of being an artist. You're your own boss. You just don't make a living, but that's another story. So now we go to drawings on paper, and in that register I have a lot of different series. I'm showing here like 3 or 4, no, 3 I think. So we can move on to the next slide. So the gouaches, that's a work of, actually that's, this series is the oldest series I've been working on. I'm still working on them. It's, oh yes, all these series are continuous. Some I stopped, some I'm still working on. So these are gouache on paper, and they are also like fragments of things I look at, I see, I remember, and I just paint them and I build on top of it. So next slide. And for that series I work, they're all the same. Each image, like the first one we saw, is 9 by 12 inches. Then I build bigger pieces by having different paintings all together, but it's planned, and the position of each painting, each panel is definite. So that's 2 together, then we have 4 or 6 together, I think the next slide. 6 drawings together. So there I become more narrative. That's why I call that series talkative, to the opposite of the silent paintings. Here you try, the viewer is trying to understand these shapes. And some you can really understand it. You can, oh, this is a ladder, or this is a bird, or whatever, or not. So I try to paint just as little as possible and go to the next drawing, and I go back and forth to try to tell a story, which is just like a poem, basically, a visual poem. You can see next slide. So these ones are 27 drawings together, each one 9 by 12. And that one was done during an artist residency at MASMOCA. And that was things I just noticed during my lunch break around on the campus. So building elements, exhibitions at the museums, and so on. They are more like sketches where not everything is said. And this one was also made at MASMOCA, another residency. 42 drawings.
So do you choose the order that they are placed therein, in terms of it being a story?
Yes. And again, I start with 1 or 2 drawings. I put them on the floor, usually on the wall. If I have like a residency is great, because you have bigger studios. I put them on the wall, and then I decide and I make another one. The first one might not be finished. I go back to it, and so on. So it builds. It's not just Legos. It's one is finished, one piece of Lego is finished, and you put another piece of Lego. I put them next to each other, then I move them to build the whole thing. And sometimes I go back to one drawing to add a detail or color, because I want the flow. I want a flow. I want the eye to navigate between all these drawings and to go up and down, left and right, and go back and up. So it's not from just left to right, like we read a book, and top left to bottom right. It has to keep continuous, a little bit like a mandala. Things are continuous and go back to the beginning. So that's the challenge, to make the eye move around the piece. Smaller drawings, 8 by 10. This is the Tears of Fire series, which I started early, actually late December 2019. When I just heard, like all of us, the news about the COVID, and when it struck China first, and I felt, we were all devastated, right? But it was still far away. So I had I'm speechless basically right now. I feel in the emotion, knowing that people would drop dead in the streets, and we didn't know what it was, and all those things. So I really thought about the hurt, people being hurt, China being hurt. So I thought about their symbol, the dragon, which is a symbol of water and strength and luck and courage and high values. And the dragon was attacked by a kind of fire. So I did a more narrative series about it, and it was just between my emotions and my kind of requiem for all the dead. So we can see next slide, you see detail of one drawing. So I used Chinese paper as well, and I painted over, and I used some of the Chinese iconography, the mountains, the dragon, but it's abstract somehow, but it's inspired by. And the next slide is when the virus hit us. So I switched to another type of dragon, which has a different meaning. It's the dragon. The dragon has the meaning of evil in Western culture, but it still hurt. It hurts everybody. That's an ongoing series. It's not done until the virus is around. I'll keep making drawings.
Powerful, absolutely.
So it's a mix of chaos, harmony, of fear and beauty. It's life. Now we go to something very, very small. These are tags, like shipping tags, and you put on big luggage and stuff like that, or in museums, storages. And they are kind of, it's like a notebook, observations again. So you can see next slide, there's a detailed one. So they're very small, like 3 inches by 4 inch. No, actually it's, 3 inches by 1 inch wide. And the drawings, just drawings for the sake of drawing with, basic paper and graphite, and that's it. And all you can tell with just that. It's very, it's a very quiet, it's also related to kind of doodling. You're on the phone, something happens and your mind is wandering somewhere else. So these are the result of that. And that one was, it's part of a study also. I'm working on another project, not a new project, but didn't come to life yet, about eyes. So I've been studying eyes in, medieval painting. It's one of them. Aha. Okay, the short series. So, working 2D is one thing, working 3D is the same thing. It's just trying to put ideas into shapes or thoughts into shapes to combine form and meaning, and trying to create meaning out of chaos. So this is trying to find meanings and stories out of broken glasses. Next slide will show some detailed one. Don't ask me what the stories are telling. Just objects, and you put this and that together and something comes out. I don't know. It's just, and then people look at them and they make sense out of it, or they don't.
Well, that's one of the powers of art, is that each observer is able to make their own interpretation from it.
And to talk about trying to protect something with something that's already broken, basically we all have to take care of each other. There's always something there, broken or not. There's always beauty. This is a dried lemon. And the little wire on top is the, the spiral of a notebook, just pulled out and shaped.
I feel like each one's it's a little puzzle to try to figure out what the object was originally.
Yeah, you have to think about it more like poetry. And associations, it's like a car, a fancy car, sharp edges of a broken glass. And what? You still want some more images because it keeps going?
Yeah, I think we can continue. Again, if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to just type those into the chat, and we'll continue onward. Again, I'm going to encourage everybody to, if you have the opportunity, to come to the library and see the works, some of these works in person. Obviously, you get a whole new experience.
Okay, for this series, the Me as a Goddess series, it's the same thing. It is looking at things we don't see, even if they're big. Public monuments, nobody looks at them, ever, really, unless there's a political argument to be made. So I decided to install ephemeral pieces on these sculptures. They are bronze usually, or kind of metal, and very, very strong. And to make people look at them, so of course, the installation doesn't last more than a couple of hours. And when I do an installation, like when I was doing the installation at the library, I had all these people asking me questions. So I think that's the part of the, one side of the artist work is to educate sometimes. But educate, you cannot say everything in an art piece, so with a dialogue. So that provokes, doing that in the cities, in the street of a city, would provoke some dialogue, at least make people stop and look, like you would stop in front of a painting. Instead of spending 30 seconds looking at the painting, try to make the people stay 1 minute. So that's just what I'm trying to do. So we can go on the next slide. So that's a monument on 106th Street and West End in Manhattan. And it's a monument to the memory of a young couple who died in the Titanic disaster. It's a beautiful monument. There's a fountain. And basically, it's the parents had this monument built for their daughter. And I had a piece made, I did a piece about being a mother, which is totally independent from the sculpture. But I made the piece first, and I was looking around the city to find a monument to put the piece on. And I thought was the appropriate one. So again, those art pieces I made with salvage found objects. That's me as Eleanor Roosevelt. She's amazing. This one is amazing what she did. She created libraries, by the way. And here she is in Riverside Park, standing, nobody looks at her. So I gave her a necklace for people to look at her for, a couple of hours. And I used the Metropolitan Museum tags, which don't exist anymore. And I made one as me, and she wears that, and she's a goddess for 2 hours. Next slide is Balto, the dog who saved, I forgot which, the name of the city. Balto is the leader dog of slave dogs who brought penicillin to a remote village, I think Antarctica.
Alaska?
Higher.
Oh, the Arctic Circle, maybe.
Arctic Circle, yeah, Antarctica. So again, the kids know that sculpture because it's at their size, real size, and they all climb on it. But the grown-ups don't look at the sculpture. On the top right picture, you see a lady looking at the sculpture at the plate of the sculpture, because something weird is on the sculpture, not because the sculpture is there. That's all. And I'd made that piece about, basically those recycling inside recycling. Every piece is named after a poem I made with my daughter using a magnetic kit, poetry kit, those things you put on the refrigerator. And every day we would move the words around and try to make sense out of chaos again. And I wrote down some of these poems, and I tried to put them into shape with objects, found objects, or the medication jars. And I put a little toy in one of the jars and a little light, and it's like a genie bringing, magic, bring medicine to sick people, thanks to a brave dog. And a sculpture in the park to remind us that, of these heroic moments. I think after that this is another type of installation. They are very ephemeral, and they all end up in a trash bag, thank God. So I encourage everybody to pick up trash on the beaches. But I thought, I see these things, I cannot help, there's beauty in them. And I make these paintings with circles and dots and stuff like that. So one day we were on vacation in Belize, and the beach was wonderful, except the beach next to where we were staying was not cleaned, and it was really a disaster. It was, what we see now, we all know all the plastic in the sea. So I tried to make sense out of it at the moment. So I collected the caps, the bottle caps, and I made a piece like if it would be an art piece. And I took pictures, and a few years later, I took that picture and I printed it on the tower. That's seen in the show. It's not here in the presentation. And I hope and a whole story going on. And then from the printed photo on the actual piece of fabric, which is made as a towel, then I made a video where the towel is the main character. So we'll see the videos at the library. So I think, I don't know if there's something else, the next slide. So that scene at the library, it's one of also installation, which is this main character in the video, that big entrapped. My idea was here to create a large scale maze, human scale maze, like us, you know, walking through these nets.
So there are, we're going to take a moment to look at this video.
Yeah,
there are two monitors, TV monitors in the gallery, and all told between both of them, there's I think 7 different videos, that you've shared with us. So just give me a moment here, and I'm going to bring up just 1 second. Hopefully you can see that.
we can see it, yeah.
Oops.
In disguise. Like,
Oops,
Oops. Hold
that's
on.
next one.
Just 1 second. Oops. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Second here.
Here we go.
As I mentioned, I'm usually on the other side of this, so I apologize for the clumsiness there. So hopefully you're seeing the slide now.
It's kind of a recap, you know. I already said that along the presentation.
So I think you do, express it very well there in terms of just some of the inspiration or thought process of what you go through in your creative process, and the combination of different materials, creating something new out of that.
If you, yeah, it's endless, because if you take that, you know, try to catch a thought and put it in a form, it's really a mix of forms, being using formal approaches, you know, processes, or use oil paint versus paper and so on. Try to apply the right form to an idea and try to narrow it down to its essential expression. I would not say anything, just make things without, you know, intentions, just make things. It's things come out by themselves. So I think next slide, yes. So those are works in progress, a new series, which started like, you know, last year with the Tears of Fire drawings about COVID. This is of course about Black Lives Matter. And I'm developing a series of embroidery on vintage doilies. So just the 2 first ones, more are coming. And I have another series going on. Next slide. I'm doing more of the shredded, but this time with passports, and the material is fantastic because something you have to destroy when it's expired, but the images, the text, the dates and whatever are, you know, beautiful and are good memories. So here it's a portrait I'm making for a friend of mine and of her daughter, and a passports, documents, plus the photo of the kid and some others without the photos. And I think that's it. Yeah, I really have to say thank you for everybody, and showing at the library, showing at libraries in general is really a great advantage for the artists, because we are not, it's not just a commercial gallery. It engages in a dialogue with, it's a live space, and that's, thank God we have libraries. And I had great questions from the kids when I was doing the installation on Wednesday, and from adults too, and that was really nice.
So I'm just going to stop sharing here for a second so I can get back to seeing the chat. I'll bring up the slides again as needed. So first of all, Pauline, I just have to thank you so much for walking us through all the different types of work that you do, some of your thought process and inspiration for the work that you do. And I encourage everybody, this will be up through the month of October in the library's art gallery. I'm excited with this opportunity to have a virtual program, but something that's connected to actually something going on inside the building here at the library. I'm going to check here in the chat. We do have, I think, a comment and a question. What an absolutely beautiful use for junk mail. I will never be able to look at junk mail in the old way again. The first fusion mandala work you showed us, did you use a measuring or mechanical device to get the curves into a specific shape, or did you allow the curves to form in whichever way they occurred?
All right, so yeah, two things. So the junk mail, yes. Be aware, whatever you throw away, somebody can make something out of it. So be aware of what you throw away. Keep it safe. Well, the mandalas, I use a very basic template because I work on a translucent disc. I put it over just a target template, and I've lines, diagonals, and I've a grid, and that's it. And I move my disc above the template to create off-centered geometries. But I link different lines like that. So it's on a template, but it's also freehand. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see, a couple more questions here. Pauline, you mentioned that your work is a matter of trial and error. How do you determine when a piece is finished?
That's one of the hardest things to do, is to say when it's finished. So that's why, again, I think all these different works are being done more or less at the same time, and sometimes it can be on the table. It's a way of speaking. It's not finished. When I say it's on the table, it's not finished. Many years later, I might come back to it, and I get it, because when I do a work, I know where I'm going more or less. I kind of plan my trip, but then no more gas in the car, or I'm hungry, or whatever. You stop and you get distracted, and things come along. So I always let the work sit before I say when it's finished. But if I start to shred it and it has to be a full circle, everything full, then I know when it's finished, because it's when there's no more room to put any more loop of paper, for example.
Sure. A couple more comments and questions. This is from Christy Devereaux. Thank you, Pauline. This was fascinating, and thank you so much. Another question, which contemporary artists have influenced your work?
A lot of them, really a lot of contemporary. I mean, the list is long, but I want to say I was really influenced by Paul Klee, which is not contemporary, but is a modern artist, because he was, and Marcel Duchamp. But Paul Klee really mixed, he was first of all a musician, and he used painting and also, but I think the way he was able to bring poetry in image was really essential to my education and to my, it was a revelation. But I'm saying that today, but if you want to look at if we look at the talkative series, the gouache drawings, I would say it's Bram van Velde who inspired me there, and so on, Marcel Duchamp is a little bit everywhere. Of course, it's the ready-made. So for all artists today, Marcel Duchamp is very important. You take things in the street, you make something out of it. Kurt Strister, and it goes on and on. Today, I know that we have all the means to see, to get educated. It's so much. I'm not able to answer the question for who today.
I was wondering if we had a program, I think earlier this year, on earth art, and somebody is using, natural objects, and Andy Goldsworthy's work was referenced there. I certainly was thinking about that during the video piece. Obviously, those were, human-made plastic bags, interacting with the natural environment there. But I was also imagining Andy Goldsworthy's work of stacking stones or sticks or things like that. Again, that were temporary as well. They were not permanent pieces of work.
Yeah, that's the risk of the artist also, to how do you document your work? Is it forever? No, my work is not forever unless I make it out of plastic, because plastic is forever. So the point of my work is addressing that material. And I didn't want to make it like a big judgment, we all have to recycle or not use plastic. We have to see that plastic is an incredible material. It's ingenious, it's precious, it's beautiful. We have to use it in a very careful way. That's all. And I don't want to be to make a statement more than that. Just look at what you do every day, what you use every day. That's all. But I don't want to, like, for example, the video you saw, those plastic bags as water snakes. Those pieces don't exist anymore. We just have the video left. And that's it. No need to keep the art itself, the object itself.
There's a few more here. This is from AJ. Your healing series. You answered a question of mine before I had a chance to ask it. I have viewed art as a way to communicate something that cannot be done easily with just words. In your description of your healing series told me that this was exactly what you did. You began with a concept and used your artwork as a way to communicate that concept. So now let me ask you a question. Did you ever go to where your work was exhibited and witness whether your audience actually received your message in any way?
Yeah, I've been to places where it was shown. It's hard to get what people think. People are pretty shy. But when I was installing at the library, and I got a lot of feedback right away, and I know that my work usually, because there's something about it which is very, the mundane material in the show at the library. There are other things when you see the oil paintings, it's more intimidating somehow. But people start to ask questions. So why do you use plastic? The kids say, what is it? What is it for? It's like, So basically, I'm here to ask the questions, not always to answer it. And I think that's one of the role of the artist, is to ask some questions or put some questions on the table, and then it's up to all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you had just told me that story of the 10-year-old coming up and saying, "What's it for?" Which was a direct, question in that way, but obviously a much more profound and philosophical one as well.
Right, because he said it in a way that I thought, okay, he's a little blasé 10-year-old or something like that, and not young enough anymore to be just playful. But actually, he was trying to really get the meaning out of it. So after 5 minutes, I came down my ladder and I said, okay, come and say, yeah, I get it. This is like junk mail, but so what? So I asked him to walk backwards a little bit from the cathedral series. And I said, what do you see now? And he took a few minutes to think about it. And he said, it makes me think about some kind of architecture. and there's water going on, and there's some kind of gray light, and on and on and on. And he said, this is Venetia, the city in Italy. He didn't say the word, he couldn't remember the word. He said, this is that city, you know, with the water in Italy. And I'm like, you are very close to it. And I mean, that was a wonderful experience. That kid gave me so much at that moment. And after that, he opened up and he showed me that he was drawing himself. He was carrying in his hand a sketchbook, and he showed me all his drawings. And I thought, okay, world is great.